Welcome to this presentation made in Godot 3. It's open source, available in French and English. The link's in the description if you want to use it for events all around the world, or help translate it as well. Godot is the engine you've waited for. Well, okay, that's playing with words a little bit, but I'm going to try and show you why Godot is worth the look and why you're going to hear more and more about it in the game development industry moving forward. So first, what is Godot? It's the Unity-like free engine, which features a complete editor. So on the likes of GameMaker, Unity, and some others. It's multi-platform, available on PC, Mac, and Linux, and it exports to a wide range of devices. Note that even consoles are supported. For example, you have a console port of Deponia on PlayStation 4. It's been made in Godot. There's been some games exported for other consoles. The thing is, in order to export to a console, you need to obtain a license and a development kit from the manufacturer, and that's the reason why these exports are not available for everyone. Godot's philosophy is that it's an all-in-one package. If anything, any tool you need for most games is not in, they'll want to add it. So for one, you have a built-in code editor. You don't need to use an external editor, even though you can. There are some plugins for Atom and some other popular text editors. There's an animation toolset with 2D rigging included, and in future versions, it should support mesh deformation. You also have a visual programming language and a shader editor. You can see on the right on the screen. This is a screenshot from Andreas Ezo. This editor is not going to be available in 3.0 because the graph rendering system has changed, and this system has to be ported to the new Godot engine, so it will be back in 3.1. But you also have a text-based shader editor with full auto-completion. There are three languages that are very specific to Godot that are here to make your life a bit easier. You have GdScript. This is a language that's kind of inspired by Python and Lua, but it's designed for gameplay programming. It has built-in types for vector calculations and things like these. It gives you a very rich auto-completion in Godot. Like, you can access all the objects in your scene. You have auto-completion for about as many things as you'd like. There's a language you can see on the right, which is VisualScript. It's new in Godot 3, and this one allows you to code a game using a graph of nodes. It's for artists and designers who are not necessarily too comfortable with writing code and want a more visual approach, but also something like they don't have to care about the syntax, for example. The developers in a team can expose functions and tools to VisualScript. So it's a bit like Unreal Engine's blueprints if you want. And then you have GDScript. You can code shaders in Godot for 2D and 3D. And the language, GdScript, is very similar to GLSL. It has almost all the features available in OpenGL ES3, but it simplifies the process a little bit as it automates some tasks, like creating shader variations or things like these. Here's an example of GdScript. You can see it's quite similar to Python. It's based on indent, but you also have a var keyword. Some notations come from Lua. I'm not sure we can see them on this picture, but overall, it's a very simple language. You can learn the syntax within an hour, maybe two. Size does not matter. We see this trend where programs tend to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but Godot is one executable. It's 20 megabytes, so you can download it in a few seconds. You can launch it without installing it. The recent builds are even less than that, around 16 megabytes. It includes the entire engine, all the UI tools, everything you need to create your game. Then, when you want to build the game for mobile, for example, it's something that not everyone needs. You'll have to download the mobile export templates and the SDK. Same thing if you want to code in C#, a language that's officially supported starting with Godot 3. You will need to download a mono C# version of Godot, which is a bit bigger because it includes the compiler. Let's talk about new features in Godot 3. All you're going to see happened in 1 year of development, a little more than that, and version 3 should come out in December 2017. So yeah, that's a non-exhaustive list of new features. You have PBR shading, a new 3D rendering engine, new programming languages, augmented reality, virtual reality, a post-processing engine, GPU particles. We're going to talk about some of these. But you really have a lot that happened with the development in 1 year. That is because, yeah, actually size matters. The size of the project, I mean. Godot is an open source project, and yet it's in excellent shape. So one thing you have to know is Godot was made inside a game studio, and it's been open sourced when it was already mature enough. It had been used on professional games, and since then it's really picked up steam. It's grown faster and faster. Today there are more than 450 contributors, tons of commits. The figures are not even up to date now. I made the presentation a month ago and they are much higher than that already. And more importantly, the project gets funding, $6,000 a month on Patreon by some companies, but also a lot of just users, contributors. Some jobs, some specific features are sponsored by different organizations. So there's been WebAssembly, it's supported by Mozilla, and C# support has been entirely funded by Microsoft. And Juan, the lead developer, already gets jobs to work on other engines. So this is a sign that, his knowledge is quite valuable, and the engine already is quite professional. Because it's already powerful enough for professionals, Godot already attracts some professionals. You're going to see with Godot 3 coming out, it's solving a lot of problems that companies may have had with Godot 2, especially the limited 3D engine, but not only. Some game studios already use it. So on the right, you can see Gamedev. They sponsored the Kickstarter, they helped the Godot team a lot, and they make casino games. They're a sizable studio with a few dozens of employees. So this is already a fairly important company. You have Guaran Apps. You're going to see an example of their work in Godot. These are two French guys. They make indie games. Kivano, you'll also see an example, I believe, in the presentation. I believe Indian game studios. I'm not sure about this one, but some game studios use it already. You have schools that cover it. So there's School for Games in Berlin, in Germany. Lars teaches Godot for the first semester. He's also quite active on the Godot Facebook group. He's part of the community now. There's Kids Can Code. This is an association, a non-profit, and Chris, the author, helps with the official documentation. We work together sometime to try to put some content out. And he's also a content creator. I just didn't repeat that down there. He has a YouTube channel with free Godot videos. Alongside, Heartbeast is looking to cover Godot. It's a bigger channel than GDQuest. He's been doing game maker tutorials in the past, and he already uses Godot on his own work. And, well, you should know me, GDQuest. There are a few more channels, but I'm really talking about people who do this for a living, who do this kind of professionally. Let's talk about Godot's design now, and especially the design principles that make it a bit unique, a bit different from other engines. So note that every game engine is different. There are so many programming paradigms you can use, patterns, approaches, UI design. Godot has two aspects that make it stand a bit more from the rest, stand out. For one, I told you it tries to integrate every tool you need to produce your game in the editor. Unity is kind of moving towards that as well, but they've taken a lot of time for it. You have a complete UI system in Godot and framework, level editor, you can edit the UI in the editor as well, even for plugins and all. You have an animation editor, all of these are very robust. And more than that, you have the integrated coding reference, integrated coding editor. And the other important thing, more technical, is that you don't have an enforced programming pattern like a model view controller or entity component system. While you could apply these to Godot, they are not part of it by default. Godot really focuses on object-oriented programming. It helps you fragment your game into chunks that really resonate with your game design. It makes it quite easy to make your code reflect your game design on paper. So you have the example of a character with a shadow, a body, a collision shape. It can collide with the world. It has a slot to spawn a weapon next to it. If the character has a weapon, the weapon will be in front of him. Hierarchy of objects is called a node tree. Your entire game is a tree of nodes. Nodes are objects. The particularity is that they all work the same way. You can add, remove a node from the game or from the scene, and any group of nodes can be saved separately as a scene. So you can split your game into as many scenes as you want. You can instantiate your scenes within other scenes. In a sense, these are a bit like prefabs in Unity, but with much more flexibility because it really represents a chunk of gameplay with everything packaged inside of it. And you can inherit from scenes as well. You can create a character scene, have a warrior and a magician and things like these. And when you modify the character scene, the child scenes will also update. This is very useful because it lets designers contribute to the code and the code structure themselves without messing up the developer's work or without requiring special tools for the game. Godot itself is a Godot game. I've quoted that because it's not exactly true, but Godot relies on its own engine in a sense. The most important part in that is that the entire Godot UI is based on the same framework, the same tools you're going to use to create your game's UI. Meaning you can create plugins with the same code you use to create your game's UI. Okay, you can modify the editor. We'll see you can run code inside the editor. It's very robust as well, and it's fairly bug-free despite its complexity because the program itself uses its own system. If we ask the question, which is best between Unity, Unreal, Godot, GameMaker, whatever you want, well, the answer is neither of them. It's important to understand that game engines are very complex and they're very different. They answer different needs for specific games, and all are more or less valid depending on the project. So I've put some popular game engines on the right. You have Phaser. I know professional studios, friends who use it to create advert games, to create games for the browser, and they're very happy with it. libGDX, high-performance 2D engine. I think it's only 2D. It's more of a library on which you can build more complex engines and applications. Unity, Unreal, very popular. Unreal, extremely potent for very high-end 3D graphics. And I'd say that Godot today, as it is, answers the needs of indie game developers very well. The fact that it's lightweight, it has a dedicated 2D engine, so good 2D performance and intuitive 2D game programming, gameplay code. It's very nice for smaller teams already. and it could certainly work for larger teams because it's open source. That's also a thing to keep in mind. A larger company can extend, modify the engine, and make it work for their very own workflow. So let's talk about a few features in Godot. Among many others, I really can't cover them all here because game engines are, again, very complex. They do tons of things for you nowadays, but there are many new tools in Godot 3 that are worth talking about, and also lots of interesting features that were available already in Godot 2 that you may not know of. So here are some key features that make the engine stand out, starting with the ability to code in C#. Unity users will be quite happy about that, and C# developers in general. C# is officially supported, starting with Godot 3. It uses the latest version of Mono, so this is the most up-to-date version of the language, and you can code in Xamarin Studio, Visual Studio Code, and there's work going on to officially support Visual Studio. It's one of the 3 official gameplay programming languages in Godot. The other 2 are GdScript, we've seen an example before, which is simpler than C#, and Visual Script. If you are just getting started with Godot, I would recommend using GdScript. C# is really something that C# developers will love because they already know the language. But aside from that, it's probably a bit more complex to learn than GdScript itself. Let's talk about GDNative, made by Caroufel and Bojidar. Caroufel is probably going to work now officially on Godot alongside Juan, like professionally for a living. This system allows you to expose the entire Godot engine to any library, to link them without having to recompile the engine. This is a big step forward. I don't know another tool, another game engine that does this, although this might exist. It allows you to get near native performance, so you can code in C, in C++, compile your algorithm or something like that, and right in the editor you can connect it and access the entire engine API. There are languages that are supported officially. I think that's the case for C and C++, at least C, that's for sure. And then the community has worked on Rust. There's a Python binding available, and D is in the works as well, I believe. All that is maintained by the community. The Python one is very advanced. It's made by Tuiman. He's put a lot of work inside this, so you can use Python as well. Let's talk about signals, another feature in Godot. This is Godot's version of the observer pattern. It's very interesting because it's available in the editor. And it's a very important tool when you create games, because this allows you to connect nodes together and pass a message without having to couple the 2 nodes or the 2 scenes together. Let me give you an example. When you have 2 characters that are fighting, you want to update the life bar when the character takes a hit, but you don't want to have the life bar look directly at the character. In this case, the demo, it's running in Godot and it's using signals. When the green character takes a hit, the life bar receives a signal, a message that says the health of the character changed. Here is his new health. Please update. And you can have fairly clean code and do a lot of things with this system. It's quite powerful. I have a tutorial on the subject, so you can find this in the description. You can also animate anything in Godot, pretty much any property with the animation system, meaning you can animate the size, rotation of limbs of your character. As I told you, you can also rig a character straight in Godot, but you can also do things in the animation editor, like enabling or disabling collisions, toggling booleans on and off. And the interesting things thing about that is that, for example, a trap in a game that would damage the player, you don't have to control the collisions via code. You do everything in the animation editor, and all you have to care about is like damage the player if he touches the trap when the trap has its collisions on. You can also call functions from the animation editor. So again, you can really use this animation system beyond just animation. Here's an animation-based combat system. The collisions on the weapons is controlled by the animation tools. For example, for the character, he has his sword, it's invisible, but it's also not hitting the enemies right now until I press the attack button. You can see when the enemy is working on the character, the spear doesn't kill me because the collisions are disabled by the animation editor. And then when the enemy hits, the animation is active so I can die. You have a Timelab editor straight into Godot. It's top-down and isometric. You also have a grid map editor for the 3D system. If you look at the top of the interface, you can see the 2D, 3D, script, etc. workspaces. You have a framework for point-and-click adventure games. You can do a lot of things with these. It's a bit like the RenPy and some other visual novel engines. It gives you a natural language in which you can write the dialogue and manage the interactions in your game. You can potentially use this for multiple types of games, even though initially it was designed for the Dog Mentosa and Pizza Boy game, which is available on Steam. It's an adventure game. And it's a point and click. So it's designed to help you manage objects, for example, in your inventory. Godot 3 comes with a modern 3D engine. It's now with GI, global illumination, real-time rendering, and GI probes, screen space reflections, better ambient occlusion, lots of things that were just missing in Godot 2. So it's a complete rewrite of the engine, and it's using some recent technologies. It's a lot closer to what you would find in Unity, Unreal. Right now, it doesn't have light mapping and some options like these. It's only OpenGL ES3, so it's not available on very low-end mobile devices. This is coming back in Godot 3.1, but you can see it can render pretty good scenes right now. Let's now talk about particles. In short, you can spawn a lot more particles. You can do those very thin particles you can see in modern games because they are now GPU powered. This is a completely new GPU particle rendering engine. Aside from that, you also have AR and VR that are available, work done by Bastien Olige. It's based on the GDNative API I talked about earlier. So you can create VR games for the Gear VR and many other tools. And you also have access to the AR kit for augmented reality. Here's an example of augmented reality, just to show you it works. So this is a demo done by the developer, Bastien Olige. And then you have a demo of virtual reality with, I believe that was the Gear VR. Yeah. Showing you the interactions. It's made in Godot 3 Alpha, but it works like a charm, no problem. And it's made by Lamberto. I don't have the name anymore, but you can find the credits at the end of the video. You can create complex user interface in Godot. The screenshot you can see on the right is not Godot itself. It's a program made in Godot called RPG in a Box. It's a tool to create RPG games, and all you can see in the interface relies on Godot's UI system. So you can do a lot of things with it. It's fairly complex. It's designed to support Godot's interface, right? And yeah, Godot provides you with a very robust UI programming system, but also UI design tools. Now you have the ability to place guides, to snap to guides. You have some smart snapping going on, a bit like you would find in a graphics design program, Affinity Designer, Photoshop. So I really recommend that you try it out. It's quite impressive. You have the ability to sync scripts in real time and sync scenes. The idea with that is you're going to launch the game to try it out from time to time. And if you're doing mobile game development, you can even do remote deployment. Okay, so you can play the game, try it out on mobile. And if you edit a script in Godot or a scene, modify a level, the changes reflect in-game, in real time. And these are persistent, so these are saved even after you close the game, unlike it's been in Unity. So that's really interesting. Here's an example with Jotway Canyon. You can see the monster just had a simple attack, the slime, and the developer is uncommenting just a few lines of code. And now the attack has some pushback. Right, the change has been taken in account without restarting the game. You also have a keyword called tool. When you add this keyword at the top of your script, the code is going to run inside the editor. This is a screenshot of a Godot game, and the yellow path you can see it is not a sprite or anything. This is a simple curve, and the developer is using code to render the levels on top of it, but also to create this thick yellow curve. It's Apps, the company I was talking about, Game Dev Studio, a little before. And you can use this tool keyword to visualize the motion of AI, like how it's going to patrol. You can also use it to do things like these, like small plugins. Andres has made this for his game, so this is not available in Godot by default. It's a tool to place large chunks for the environment to design levels a bit more conveniently. You have this example on the game Get Teddy by Apps. The developer has made a level editor right in the editor, so it's really specific to his game. And when he starts the game, well, the level just uses all this data and populates the map with everything he's done in the editor. So he can easily try out the level and make changes, just to update the game. Another example of the tool mode, this is Walrider, a game made by Zillan. He's a designer who worked at Ubisoft. And in this game, you can see the complexity with the cannons. They rotate, but by really specific ranges. It's all designed by hand. And to do this, he's used the tool mode, because it's very specific to his game, to draw the direction in which the cannon is going to rotate based on the angles he's using for the start and stop position of the cannon. And when he's designing the level, he can instantiate the cannons and then see in real time exactly how they are going to rotate and where they are going to throw the character. Okay, so now hopefully you're convinced that you must give this engine a try. Or maybe not, but in any case, here are some resources to learn Godot. So there's a very active community, even though it's not absolutely huge. It's growing pretty fast, and people are active on social networks. There's a forum. You can find open source channels if that's what you want. So you have a matrix chat, but also IRC. You can find people on Reddit. The Discord server is very active. There's also a questions answers website. This is always convenient. There are official tutorials and an online manual, which you can access from the community page on the website, but also from the engine in the help menu. You have a built-in reference. That's very important. We're going to see that in a second. It's available inside the code editor, so you never have to go online to find the code reference. And on top of that, you have some open source demos. And because it's an open source engine, you can find a lot of people who share their work on GitHub. So a lot of open source resources in general. There's a built-in reference. You can select any keyword, text, something you don't know in the code editor. And when you press Shift F1, it's going to fire a help search with a list of matches. You can navigate them with your keyboard and press Enter to open the page. It opens up right in the script editor, and then you can use Alt left and Alt right to navigate between the files in the script editor. So this is quite convenient because you can really jump instantly from your code, make changes, try things out, and jump back into the reference, looking at the node or the class you are looking for information on. There are some content creators I can recommend right now to get started. Note that this might change in the future, like there might be more, but right now I can recommend 3 who are active, 2 in particular. Kids Can Code, he makes complete series, game creation tutorials for beginners, and he's quite active with the official documentation and with development. And there's NJGA Studio, who does the same thing. He doesn't post videos all the time, but he's very consistent. Like every now and then he adds new content. I can also tell you to follow Hardbeast and Ivan Skoj. The 2 are looking to create more Godot related content. Ivan has been inactive for a few months, but he has some things in the works. Hopefully it's coming in the near future, and same thing for Hardbeast. Then there's this channel, GDQuest. More content is coming. You know, I'm working on a lot of things at the moment, but I'm not forgetting the channel at all. So you will see some new free series coming in the future. This said, thank you very much for watching this presentation. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments, to ping me on Twitter. This presentation, again, is open source. You can download it on GitHub. It's a Godot 3 project. You'll need a recent version of Godot 3. You have some credits with some links also on the GitHub page. You can access the various games by the different creators. And yeah, you can reuse this presentation, give it to anyone, anywhere in the world. That said, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.